Well, hello. We're live. We weren't live last week because, Mike, I don't know if you have this at work, but like you have people that you work with, and they're just not dependable. You go on vacation, and the shit falls apart, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Technically, last week was 4th of July here in the United States, so it was. I
was just celebrating my independence from you, honestly. On a
fair enough.
Monday night.
Fair enough. And you can see the missing. So he broke down about $100 banner just so we wouldn't have to see his bills anymore.
Oh,
what's
here
up,
he
Jeremy?
is, the beautiful human.
Hey, what's up?
Well, I figure what we'll do is we'll do like we do normal.
Somebody needs to adjust their camera.
Yeah. So we can be all chinless.
Do this.
That's how I
want it from the side, like this.
Well,
maybe like this.
Well, now you definitely like Oscar the Grouch.
Oscar the Grouch style, right?
Exactly. Well, let's. What are we doing hobby wise, Matt? You working on anything?
What am I going to do? I'm doing Wild Runners this month. Yep. Man, a lot of dogs come in that army box. That is for sure for halflings in the mega army box.
That's cool.
So I'm working on those. Other than that, not much.
Awesome. Mike, I don't know if I should ask you this. Are you hobbying?
I'm getting the shirts together for the Masters team. I unpacked my stuff, so that's good.
Yeah.
Now that I've moved, but no, I'm barely doing any hobby. I have plans to finally rebase the dwarves, or depending on how Masters goes, paint up a couple more units over the.
So, like, if the Masters are terrible and you end up like in the bottom half,
I am 4-2 every single Masters, or 3-3, but it's never 2-4.
So what's going to make it? What's going to make you want to paint more models?
If I see something cool, and I don't know based on the army split this year, if I'm going to see anything that's like, whoa, that's
all you're going to see is Glaze Talkers. Awesome. Didn't you hear?
Right? Yeah, exactly. I wrote an article about that for Dash 28. It's coming out Wednesday. Taking a look at the army selection this year compared to previous years.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Jeremy, I know you've got some hobby stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm exhausted. I've been painting till like 4 a.m. every day to try to get ready for.
Are you gonna make it? You're like a week away, man. Like
I may have to borrow one or two things, but I'm making good.
You
progress.
Promised us last week that this would not happen.
Well, I mean, what can I say? I have been finishing some stuff. This is my second Soul Bane on a Dread
I know
Fiend.
what the problem here is. You have been too distracted by model boobies, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's what's slowing you down. That's what's slowing you down.
Yeah. So this one has the under boob tattoo. So that was probably the most fun I had in miniature.
No, let's be honest. Only power stars have that. So.
Well, she's a saucy minx.
Okay.
And then I think the next picture is her from behind, which is also another great view. So I'm on the home stretch.
She doesn't skip back day at the gym though, does she?
No.
Look at that.
She's pretty buff.
I expected a tramp stamp on the other side.
Well, I mean, it's like one tattoo per Dread Fiend is as much as I'm allowing myself, time.
And I do like this classic Jeremy base.
Yeah, so this is my gargoyles. This is like sort of my gargoyle. But this is like a proof of concept. Like I'm just gonna ignore all your guys' shit. Just FYI, spoiler alert.
I'm loving it.
Just to show I'm gonna have gargoyles like attached to the pillar in different ways to make it look like they're flying over it or around it or whatever. So
nice.
And then I'm getting my name tabard done. I have my custom dice coming from Chessex. I'm not sure if they're going to get here in time.
Is this Banner's creation?
Is that being stored in your pants?
Well, I can shiv someone with it if they piss me off. No, Scott made this for me.
I'm renaming you the Twilight Serpent.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going to keep it. Where
show us your Twilight Serpent.
I keep the Twilight Serpent. Yeah, so just trying to get all the accoutrements of the army together. So I've been and I will be busy up until Masters. So I've been.
Well, let's throw it to Ray. We just been joined by our Canadian friend Ray Shields. Ray, what have you been hobbying? I know you've probably been painting like a madman.
Well, I'm just finishing up my Trident Realm, which were successful at Vanguard GT. And next on the docket is a elf army, because I have to join the club.
You're not cool if you don't have Glade Stalkers in your list.
I think that's the new coolness. But Trident Realm were successful, and they'll be played this year. But they're my all Mantic army. It's the first one I did that was 100% Mantic models, and I enjoyed playing with them. They were very different from the Rats. And next up is the Elves, because that's what Mike Rossi wants to see.
What is it with Canadians and Rats? That's what I want to know.
Alex Coos, same way, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like, I don't know. I guess I need to make a trip up there.
I thought it was going to be Northern Alliance across the board for all Canadians, because I thought that was going to be what's cool, but it doesn't look like anyone's playing them anymore.
No, how bizarre. Before, while Frostfang Lords are still good.
Oh. And they have Blade Stalkers too, so.
Exactly. Well, on my front, you guys know I was supposed to paint a Salamander army, right? That's not happening.
Did you even complete your June part of the challenge?
No, but I have been.
Oh my God! You said you'd paint something and you didn't paint
it. Oh my God! Yeah.
So I'm going to Michigan GT in October, and I've decided to bring Kingdoms of Men back out, and it's time to paint some new stuff. So I've been working on. Well, the first thing I've decided I'm gonna take the Monarch, right? And so I'm like dragon, but I have like this halfling army with a lot of like griffins and stuff and feathers. And I'm like, I can't just take a big scaly dragon, right? So this is what I've come up with. Billy's printing this out for me. I'll hopefully have it this weekend maybe or sometime soon. And I'll get started on it. It's called zoom in here. It's called the Fey Dragon. So it's kind of like what you can see, like the texture of the wings and stuff, very much like the griffin.
It's got a wart problem in between its legs.
Well, luckily I can sculpt around that. Yeah, I don't know about this raccoon down here though. This poor guy might get suffocated. So I've been working on that pretty hardcore, and then I got back into basing. So I started with, I've got what's all the way here. So I got first one of this base, just like a rock cliff, and then I'm like, well, Kawe from up in Montreal, he sent me a bunch of these 3D printed halfling houses. So I'm like, let's make a base out of that, right? But then I was like, man, it's so not dimensional. It's so like, it's not. I don't know. You could do so much.
You know
more.
what? When I look at that, all I'm seeing is failure to deliver on a hobby challenge.
You know what? I'm gonna catch up with all you jackasses, and then my shit's gonna be so much better than yours. You're gonna weep in its presence. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you'd have to start painting for that to happen, mate. So
I have knights on the table. I started the pinstriping on their lances.
But that wasn't the thing. It was a Mantic army challenge.
I know.
So
yeah,
you get a big F.
Well, I've got. I guess I'm gonna have to do the firefight army. So I took one of these and chopped it up, and then the last thing I did was
playing distraction. He's just trying to move on.
Yeah. So a little bit more 3D to it. Obviously, there's no rocks, right? The rocks.
I like the curve.
Yeah, this is gonna be my new regiment of knights. So I am hobbying and I am painting. It's just not what I was originally going to paint. So
not actually part of the challenge. Yeah, right.
No. So
got it.
I need
fails.
Yeah, it is what it is, man. You know what? It's like one of those things where if you don't have the mojo, you don't have the mojo for that.
Yeah, I mean, you do the best you can, and you have to go. Like, there's nothing worse than when you're you have excitement to hobby something,
but you have to borrow a model for masters.
You have to do something else.
Yeah.
The knife's already in. Let's just go ahead and twist it while we're at it. So, what we're here tonight to talk about.
I love you, Jeremy. I love you, man.
We had an episode that came out last week with Brandon from Edmonton, and that discussion kind of got me thinking, like, why isn't there more Canadians? And look, it's pedantic. I know we have Canadians in the Masters, but they're not playing as Canadians. They're playing as de facto American players because they're playing for an American region, right? So they're not playing as their Canadian scene. They're playing as their American.
They're giving up their identity, basically.
Yes,
playing in the Masters.
So I thought, like, why not?
You may as well call them Americans at that point,
right? And so I was thinking, like, well, let's have a conversation because I know it's a hot button topic. I know Texas is dead set against any expansion.
I think Texas is just scared, honestly.
Well, I would
I think
be.
Texas
because
is
some of the best
scared
players are
of
in
the
Canada.
Canadian players.
Yeah.
That's all I read. I read all those comments and I'm like, all I see is fear. And even though it is in written form, I even smell the fear.
So obviously we're joined by a couple people that actually know something about this. Obviously, Ray's played at Masters before, plays down in the Mid-Atlantic scene, Northeast scene, even though he's in Canada. And ironically, our one Canadian host, too good to join us tonight.
Reportedly booked Thor
But
tonight.
to be fair, is dead set against Canada having a region. Let me just call it out there. Doesn't think. And is it because he already is close enough to the Northeast scene to make the team? I wonder. If he was in Calgary, would he have the same opinion? I don't know. Anyways, that's what we're talking about tonight. Just connect. Is it time to expand? And Mike, you got stuff to say. I know you do.
Well, I want to put a box around what your proposition is, right? So right now you're saying that right now we have 8 regions with 8 people each that make 64 at a 6-round tournament, and it is synergistic. The math works all over the place in every direction, right? If you add another 8 people,
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Well, Swiss doesn't work, right? Swiss doesn't work.
Right. Well,
I have a crazy proposal to just lob onto the table as well.
Yes.
Go for it.
So I was out walking and I was talking to my dad about this discussion we're going to have tonight, and we were talking about just how big Canada is, and the fact that you can fit Texas and Alaska into the province of Ontario with room to spare, and that's one of our provinces.
Not that you'd want to fit Texas in there, but yeah. Anyway.
But 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. So all of Canada is right along the edge because it's bloody a lot warmer down here than it is up north.
Right.
And so in November, there's like 3 tournaments in a row that I was like, I could go to all 3. I could go to one of them. And the first one is in Edmonton, which was being discussed last week. And that's a 2,000-mile flight. The second option is in Lancaster as part of the Mid-Atlantic, and that's a 7-hour drive for me, which is completely doable. And the third one's in Rochester, and that's like 4 hours away. So as a Canadian, I'm very much a fan of playing in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic because it's drivable. It's 4 hours, it's 8 hours, it's 6 hours. It's completely doable. Probably not doable for anyone across the ocean in England. But if we follow through with that and say Canadians want to play in the region that they're closest to, maybe the change that we make is, instead of it being the U.S. Masters, change it to the North American Masters. And you say that, BC is tied to the Pacific Northwest. The Midwest is tied to Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and we're tied to the Northeast, anyone in Ontario and East. And that way Canadians are included because we're part of North America. There's no denying that. And you get to uplift the U.S. Masters to the North American Masters, which makes it sound even more prestigious. But that's my
classic. Well,
that's Keith Randall. That's Keith Randall.
Yeah. So let's be honest. There's 2 contrarians here: Mark Cox and Keith. They're never going to go for this. Never. Yeah. So they can. I'm just saying. So we're counting on if this is going to happen, it's got to be with Mike leading the charge.
Is there actually a difference between a Canadian and American?
No. The Canadians they have healthcare, they have everything.
They're I thought Canadians were just better Americans. Yeah.
Very polite.
Well, there's less of them. Yeah.
Okay. So in the Northeast, what we did, we've got to Ray's point. Anybody that is in Alex's corner of the world, right? He's got a thriving scene up where he is in Hamilton and outside of Toronto, and those guys all compete. They traditionally competed with the Northeast, and so this year, John McCready from up there actually would have made the Northeast team, but he couldn't make the flight, right? But he qualified. He was in. Totally cool, right? The problem that I see actually is the fact that COVID closed the border for 2 years. I miss all those guys. I have not seen those guys in 2 years because of the COVID shutdown. They're all going to be at Crossroads. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be like a second homecoming. You know what I mean? But in the big scheme of things, I completely agree with Ray. You have yes, well, Ray, you're the voice of reason, right? But just you have these essentially there's a gravity around each area, and those pockets will go to where the events happen to be, right? Like we were sending a bunch of people to the first King Beyond the Wall that Alex ran. Once again, COVID ruined it. Now we have to get our mojo back for that. Yeah. But there's a lot of cross-border travel, at least in the Northeast, between us and Alex's group. I know that there's another group in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, a lot of guys in British Columbia, they travel back and forth across the border all the time. Their scene took a massive hit, from what I understand, when the border closed, right? Because now you take a thriving scene and you cut it in two, and that makes a giant difference.
So for those outside the States, Mike, my understanding is like there's the Masters Committee and there's, but then each region has a reasonable amount of autonomy over what they do as scoring and what qualifies you.
Right.
Other where the regions end, is that dictated by anyone?
No,
geographically,
not really.
in the United States, we have boundaries, but going north, it's completely up to the teams to. Well, let me back up. There's two things that are probably interesting points. Some regions have you have to live in the region to play for the region. So some regions have that. So Canadians can't play, right? You don't live in the region, you can't play there. Those regions that are along the top, Pacific Northwest and the Northeast, have decided to pull in because they're technically those players are part of their scene, right? So they're just pulling them in, and they're a lot, they can pull in whoever they want because they have complete autonomy in regards to Canada.
Right. Which is interesting to me because there's a pocket of players above, let's say the Midwest, and I don't know if they travel across the border to those events. Right. I know that they must.
We're talking like Winnipeg.
Maybe. I have no idea. This is how little
there are players in Winnipeg.
Right.
There's one. We do have players in Winnipeg and Edmonton and Calgary. I mean, there are players out there. Edmonton, I don't know how far that is from the border, but it's 12 hours from Vancouver. So you're not getting to very many tournaments.
It's a hike and a half, right?
Yeah.
So the only thing that would need approval is like the renaming of it to the North American Masters, and then it would basically be up to the individual regions.
Yeah, a lot of what you guys are talking about has sort of organically happened, right? Which is the Canadians that are active, whatever scene is the south of them, that's how they've been qualifying for Masters. Right. So they've been either qualifying through the Northeast or the Pacific Northwest. I think it would just be codifying, like what you're saying, Matt. It would be taking this idea and saying officially, we're calling it the North American Masters, and this part of Canada is in this region, this part of because I think does make more sense to say that like someone living in Vancouver Island would probably want to be on the Pacific Northwest team, whereas someone in Alex's neck of the woods would want to be on the Northeast team because those are the communities that they play with. So I think it's more of just sort of a decision on the branding of the event, which is it really is right now a North America minus South America tournament since we do have members from Canada. But I think logistically not much would have to change. It would.
And is there any resistance to a rename? Is there actually any resistance?
We talked about it we've talked about it before as a Masters committee, like in the New York Masters, we talked about it. And I don't think there's a heartfelt, it's only U.S. because, like you said, if anything, North America sounds even more grandeur, and it's something that's already happening. We already have a bunch of players from Canada, so it's not like a new thing. It would just be officially breaking up Canada and saying, I think we would need to be able to say, look at the breadth of Canada and know exactly where. However, we would want to break it up. Now it's sort of unofficially broken up, but I think there would need to be some structure. Like people on the west coast of Canada up until this point are Pacific Northwest. You guys are mountain. You guys are Northeast. We would have to think about that. But
and as Rob said off air, you can't forget Mexico.
Right? Yeah, if you're gonna call it North American Masters, like there is Mexico, they're part of North America. So but. Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know how much cross-border.
None. But I'm looking at a map of Canada, and like you've got Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg are like the kind of like the odd men out, right? Like they're like.
I'd probably put those all in the mountain region.
Can you please put?
They don't want them.
Up,
we tried. We tried. They don't want them. Here's the other problem. This is the problem for Edmonton, Calgary, for example. they are so far away from any U.S. scene. Right?
Right.
Montana doesn't really have a scene, right? Like,
Well, they had an Olympics.
Well, there's the 10% of the population that wants to live in the cold. So, like,
right. I did find out that Edmonton is the largest the largest city. That's the farthest north, like, actual big city in the world.
Hey, Rob, we've got a couple of interesting comments there. So one from Matt Selleck, and he's saying the other Kings of War podcast, which of course is direct misfire. Canada has the number 4 highest country for downloads. Yep,
it's number 3 for us.
Number 3. Yep.
Yeah, we got us, United States, then UK, and then Canada.
And
then Australia.
And then Tom Annis is being a little bit provocative with his name.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, see, that's why it makes, I mean, he jokes, but I mean, it does make more sense to try to officially, I don't know.
Well, I think the points Ray makes are good in terms of being spread out. Like, it would be hard to attend enough events if you had a Canadian team to qualify.
Well, look at
unless the Canadian team went, we will also allow you to qualify if you attend here, here, and here. I mean, that's something else altogether.
But even in my case, like, for me to go to King Beyond the Wall, it's a 6-hour drive. So it's actually quicker for me to go to. I'm going to Crossroads in September, Mike. So I'll see you there. But that's a 4-hour drive. Rochester will be a 4-hour drive. Actually, King Beyond the Wall is actually like 2 hours on top of that, 2 to 3 hours. So it's 7 hours.
But what if you had a Canadian team and they looked at all the close things in the top belt and went, you can get ranking or whatever you call it, points if you attend any of these events.
Any American event would count for ranking points for a Canadian team.
But part of the fun for Masters, like I've only been to Masters twice. I missed the last 2 years due to COVID. It is, to be honest, and I think Mike would, actually, I know all of you would agree with me, is hanging out with the people, hanging out with the team, being part of the team. And, Heaven help me, I don't want the Mid-Atlantic players to hear this, but, pretend I make the Northeast team next year and not the Mid-Atlantic team. And I go with Mike Rossi. At least I know the group. I know Corey. I know Mike. I know the group of people I'm with.
Right.
I've never played Dan. I've never played the people from Edmonton. So I could be part of the Canadian team, but I have no loyalty. I have no experience with them.
Right.
So yeah, you could say for national reasons I could be part of the Canadian team, but I'd much sooner be with my friends.
So you'd rather be an American? That's what you're saying, Ray. Yeah.
I think to Ray's point, my first year, when we put the Northeast team together, there were four people that could go from the Northeast because I was just trying to build a scene at that point, and we had 4 people from other places. We weren't really a team. We didn't hang out. I didn't get to know anybody. I didn't get to know any other guys that represented the Northeast that weren't my buddies. The next year we had 8 guys. The feel of the event was very different. So to Ray's point, I'm not going to say you go to war, but man, you are going out. Like right now, we have a chat in the Northeast about just when you're flying out there, where are you going? What are you doing? We got to go to this place to eat. We got to hang out here. Are you going out to Mount Rainier? Like, we all just are looking for an excuse to hang out together. I don't know if I would have that if I was going out with me, Corey, and 6 randos. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that would work. As nice as they are, I may walk out
Everyone loves you,
with
Mike.
friends and
Everyone loves you.
God bless it. God bless it. Yeah. I mean, sportsmanship would definitely improve if we had a Canadian region. Let's be honest. And we have pretty good sports, but like it only goes up, right?
Right.
I just think there's more value into trying to officially integrate them into a system that they're already unofficially part of, which is they're already unofficially part of the scene. So it would be then, how do we make it official? How do we draw lines? I think that makes more sense to me than starting, at scratch with a whole Canadian region itself, and instead of look to try to fully integrate what's already happening into the system.
See, it's funny because I think that like Ryan Munsell and those guys in the Pacific Northwest and us in the Northeast, we got this figured out because it naturally happened that way. To your point, Jeremy, this is just how it was. And when Jake did his Jedi mind trick on me, and I was like, sure, you can have Pennsylvania and I'll have Canada, as if he was going to take Canada away ever, right? But it made sense at the time because that was like kind of the line where people were gravitating to other events. Right. That was kind of how it worked out naturally.
Do you think there would be any any argument against Mike. I mean, I don't even know who even knows where Canada is really, but like if you drew a line up and that gave you a whole big new player base, would there be any argument against that in terms of the power of your region, the relative power?
I don't think so.
Because the other
listen,
thing,
it's all just Texas and everyone else chasing after them, right? Like, who cares what anyone else does? Apparently, you know, the South is going to win West battle again, and nobody cares. It's going to be great.
I guess the other thing is all of Canada is only 40 million people. So like all of Canada is California, really, at the end of the day. So if you split Canada 4 ways, you're talking 10 million people apiece. That's, I don't know what state's 10 million people.
It's 100 players.
Yeah.
In the big scheme of things, you know what I mean? Like Alex has a thriving scene and he's got a couple dozen. The Pacific Northwest has about 20 regulars, I think, up north of the border, if you count that. And then, like, I have no idea what happens in the middle of the country.
Well, it's exactly why we only have a Masters here that, you know, is about a dozen people. It's for exactly that reason. You know, you got to have enough. You got to have a critical mass.
Right.
So where do we go from here, guys? I mean, what's
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's if the idea is to have an official team, I don't like an official Canadian team. I don't. Maybe just the Ray and I are not the best guys to say anything because we already have a scene established that works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like seriously, I mean, I am interested to know how many Canadians go to Midwest events. No idea.
None I know of.
Right.
And I mean, I go to a fair amount of Midwest events other than Adepticon.
What about Lady of the Lake? I'd be surprised there's no Canadians up there since it's practically.
There's no other place up there is what Winnipeg, right? I mean, maybe Winnipeg is. No offense to people from Winnipeg, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's time to officially and in some greater way acknowledge the skill and player base in Canada. But I'm of the mindset of don't mess with something that's working. And a lot of these scenes are really vibrant and we're coming out of COVID and we have like a lot of good stuff. That's why it just, you know, looking at ways to make them feel officially part of our system and not just like an afterthought. I think there's a lot of value in discussing how we do that. You know, and then on the other hand, if there's certain people in Canada that live too far away, they just live too far away. I mean, in the end, you know, if I had all of a sudden, if someone reached out to me and was like, hey, we have 5 players playing in Hawaii, I'd be like, well, that's awesome. But it's like, how realistic is it to try to incorporate that fully, you know?
Don't we have a player from Alaska?
Yes.
You guys? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, come on, man. It's all possible. The sky's the limit.
Well, I'm just saying that you can try to make something as inclusive for everyone, but there's going to be some people that if they're going to want to be part of the North America, if we do brand it as such,
well, maybe it's a hybrid. Maybe it's a hybrid solution where like you got the coasts, they stay the way they are, and maybe it's a Canadian team for the folks in the middle that can't get to. They have to build their own scene because there's no American scene up there for them to really Lady of the Lake notwithstanding, and maybe Refugees of the Old World are the two that come to mind. They could probably hit. Go ahead.
So
I mean, sorry.
So Adam actually makes if you could tag Adam's last comment there, right? So this is an excellent point. Now I want to go back to this. If the Edmonton group, let's say they're playing in their own scene and they have however many players playing. For us this year, we had hardly any cross-pollination across the border once again for a majority of last year's tournament scene, right? Because of COVID. But in the meantime, Alex Coos ran a bunch of events, and he had guys on his team that qualified this year for the Northeast team. So there's nothing that says if Edmonton was brought into that scene was brought into another one of the regions, they don't have to go across the border to compete with the other people, right? They could do their own thing and maybe send 1 or 2 guys depending on how things go, right? The thing that I would be concerned about is if you have, and once again, in the Northeast, you have to have a certain number of events. The events have to be a certain size, right? So for that, because of that, we have it's kind of hard to qualify if you're just in your own little scene, right? No matter how many guys, it's the same 15 people. You're not going to get enough points. But if the point system in a given region allows you to get a boatload of points because of, let's say they go to a weekly one-dayer and I'm bagging points, and the next thing you know, 5 of the 8 guys in my group qualify because we play all the time, even though there's only 10 of us. That I see as a problem, right? And once again, that's not knowing anything, but I think there's a balancing thing there. You don't need
a problem for the region, though, right?
You need to have something. Right?
But we've had that conversation a lot, right? Which is, should someone have to travel to qualify for Masters, or should someone just be able to roll out of bed and have enough events within walking distance? Or is having to travel or whatever a detriment? And we've kind of come to the point where that's part of Masters. Masters it's a different place in the country. You have to travel to it. Traveling is how you develop seasoning, and it's really how you become a good player. You don't become a great player until you travel around the country playing other great players. So we felt that we don't think it's inherently a bad thing that you have to travel for at least 1 or 2 of your scores, because again, that's part of building a strong team.
Right. And the Northeast, I actually think, is one of the more compact regions. So to Ray's point, he can drive 4 hours to go to an event. And he, all my events are within 4 hours. I'm not driving 7 hours to get anywhere. I ain't doing it. Right.
I mean, do the math. Memphis to Miami is a freaking drive, bro. So I don't know how far that is, but I'm not driving it.
Yeah. I mean, it's forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think you would counter that issue, Mike, by it would be the internal region scoring. And if you had one area of the region doing lots of one-dayers, well, then I guess you'd say, well, 2 days are worth more points, or you have to attend at least 1 or 2 2-dayers. I think you could probably manage that within region.
Yeah, our 2-dayers, for example, tap out at 100, and our 1-dayers tap out at 66 points. Right. So it's
there's lots of ways to stagger points, however, based on your, and a lot of regions do that, right? Well, they'll say you can only have one day, or you have to have one day, or you have to have two. There's based on, that's why we have that autonomy, Matt, is every scene is different. So to try to put a systematic scoring system when my scene may be, as a region head, may be completely different from Mike's scene, it's illogical. So there is still a spirit of individualism within region to region. Regions do want to have that autonomy and agency to develop their own,
like this comment here,
hierarchy.
Southeast does not count 1 days.
Exactly.
We also tell the TOs to go fuck themselves because TOs get no points for running events.
We give TOs points.
We give TO points.
We get no TO points. I can run 5 events, I get nothing. So unless I play in the event, I'm not going to make the team.
In doing that, and being able to meet your scene where they're at and have that flexibility, that's when scenes grow, because you're able to be adaptable and malleable to change. So as your scene's growing, we have like a meeting once a year where we get together all the community leaders. We talk about how do we want to do our scoring system? Do we want to change anything? What's our goals for this year? So having that freedom really is, I think, is facilitating the change or facilitating the growth.
The TO one's a really interesting point, because I guess by, running events, like, for example, it's the same here, Rob, TOs don't get any points for anything. So there's never going to be a year probably where I qualify for Masters because I run every single local event, and then the biggest event in the country. And, even if I was good enough, which I'm probably not, but, it's an interesting point on whether you should or shouldn't, because it doesn't, I guess, even if you do give them points, it doesn't mean that they're of a sufficient quality to play at the Masters.
Sure.
Like you.
So
you're talking to me?
Yeah.
If they would have given points out of me, I won an event this year. I'd be on the team.
All right. So I'm reading some of the comments over here, and I think this discussion may transition to other things. Sure. I think that's good. So the first one that I want to bring up is the reason why we do TO points is to reward players for going through the hoo-ha of running an event. But to make it so we don't get a boatload of points for running a bunch of events, what we do is we give them the average of their 2 highest scores for the year as their TO event score. So you still got to go and compete, and you got to do well. And then, you're not penalized. It counts as a score. But if my TO score for the year was not as good as John Vanaz's, go figure, right? That's just how it is, right? Yeah. But it does give them something for going through the rigmarole of running an event. I think that's a nice, for our region anyway, it's a good way to reward the trouble of going and running a 2-dayer, especially now. We've run into a lot of things in the Northeast where just the cost of securing a venue is cost prohibitive for most people to sit down and front load to run an event. It is brutal trying to get 2 days at a hotel, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of shifts now to like game spaces and game cafes instead, because man, getting a 2-dayer together in Hartford costs a boatload of money now. Whereas before we used to have this giant ballroom, you just stay for the weekend. It was fantastic. Not anymore, so we got to reward them for that. But I don't know how other regions do it, but we find that that's a good balance, because you're meeting the player where they're at. So if a guy's mediocre like me, you're getting mediocre points, but you're not getting anything. You're not getting nothing. It matters.
What about Paul's comment here about?
Yeah, I can speak to this, because this is for us in Australia. We do a negative modifier for 1-day events. Like, it's only like a -5 or something, because most of our events are 1 days. And I completely agree, Paul. It doesn't do anything to regard to strength of field, but it is harder to win a 6-game event than a 3-game event. So in a 3-game event, you get much more bouncing up and down when you win and lose, versus the prolonged winning over 6 games. Like, for example, I think when we were Paul at ShyCon on the weekend, like, you could bounce from 15th to 6th across the 3rd game only. So what you want to see is that if you end up higher across 6 games, that you are well rewarded. And it's not only about coming first, is because of the stage down approach of how points are scored.
Right. In the Northeast, we actually give more points for 2-dayers for the very simple reason that we want to reward people for going to 2-day events. I had a long discussion with my players back and forth about, if it's a 1-dayer and it has 4 rounds, shouldn't it count, and all this other stuff. And I said, sure, that's cool from a pure competitive standpoint. I agree. But I want to drive attendance to 2-day events to reward people for running 2-day events. Right. You know what I mean? If you're going to front load that cash, then there has to be another incentive. If you're a Masters, if you give a crap about Masters, to go to a 2-day event. I want to push people to those events.
I can speak to the Mid-Atlantic. The Mid-Atlantic's gone even further, where 2-day events are worth 100 points and 1-day events are worth 20 points, with the intent being that 1-day events are simply to get people to come out to use unpainted armies to try to grow the scene. And that's the purpose of a 1-day event. And the 2-day events in the Mid-Atlantic are really to hammer home, to bring your A game, to bring the top armies, and to have a lot of fun with your friends as you're drinking as well.
Drew's got a good comment here. Our 1 days here in Memphis, no paintings required. There's no sportsmanship. There's no painting. It's just straight battle, and it's just there to get some games in. And it is 3 games. We don't play 4, play 3.
I think that's based on your scene in America.
Yeah.
Like where you've got a nice critical mass of a large amount of
probably
players.
Get between 12 and 18 players for a 1 day. Yeah. Whereas our 2 days are going to get 30 plus.
So that's a good point. That one.
Yeah.
But if you can't afford to go to a qualifier, can you afford to go to the Masters?
Yeah, this is another thing where it's like, I totally respect everyone's at a different spot, but part of the Masters is this is the Masters. You have to travel to it every year. It's someplace else. There's a bidding of it. It's supposed to be the highest, most top echelon of the hobby, of skill, of army, of painting. Minus Mike. No, I'm just kidding. So
exactly. I think it's always going to be. Who can actually go, right?
It is okay for Masters, the bar of Masters, both being the ability to qualify, to make it, the expense. It's okay for it to be up here, because that adds to the sort of prestige and stability of the region. And there's lots of ways that you can go. If you can't afford it, you can always travel with buddies, share hotel rooms, talk within your region. There's lots of ways to try to cut that being cost
said,
down.
If you don't travel, I don't know how you can demonstrate your competency to prove that you are worthy of a spot on the Masters. Well, I guess it depends on which region you're in, right? For Mike, in your area, you're all 4 hours away. But here, we're not that close.
We're the same sizes. We're the same size as like Southern England, to be honest. But to the last guy's point, he actually says averaging 1 trip a year is a lot different than arranging several trips all year long. Totally cool. I get it. To go to an event, if you can drive to the event, even if it's 4 or 6 hours, and you're driving out there with a couple buddies, It's some money for gas. It's cheap food all weekend, and it's 2 nights split in a hotel room 3 ways. It ain't that bad, right? It ain't that bad. I don't want to minimize it, right? But because of the way that the hobby is constructed, the hobby is not for people who don't have income, right? Buying an army, painting an army, this is right. This is the hobby costs money. Yeah. So the barrier to entry is the amount of money you have to spend just to get an army on the table.
Yeah, I have to say with Ray in the Mid-Atlantic, like that is a hefty penalty for 1 days, because
Agreed.
I think 1 days are great for growing the scene. I mean, I can't tell what's the different regions in America, so I don't know what the scene's like in the Mid-Atlantic, right? But 1 day is the way you get people in. And I just worry that you might have people who are like looking at a game like Kings as a competitive game, but don't want to commit to the 2-day yet, and you could be hampering growth with such a severe penalty.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Assuming that they care about Masters. Not everybody.
Assuming that they care about Masters. Well, exactly.
A couple points I'd make is, obviously, even if you just have money to go to one trip, still come to Masters. We have a best of the rest. Come play, right? But I will say one thing we learned at the very first Masters that is it's a lesson that we learned. It was a very tough pill to swallow. I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest here. We had people there as mercs that were not prepared. They were not prepared for what was going to hit them. And like, we had a lot of 20-0s.
They couldn't handle the truth.
No, well, we had a lot of 20-0s, which literally swung the whole thing out of balance, because these dudes walked up and got an easy win. Whereas, I'm just making this up, but Ray might have really had to work hard for a 15-5. And so but I'm just saying, like, there is something to be said too, that you, my point is this. It's an acquired taste, and not everybody really is going to like that. I mean, it's not bad from a competitive standpoint in the sense that people are ugly on the table. What I'm saying is there's a skill level there, right? And if you're not practiced and ready for it, it can be.
You can win a local tournament and go to Masters and go 1-5, easy, 2-3, easy.
Yep.
I mean, the level of competition is very.
And to be fair, you can never win a tournament and go 4-2, as long as you're consistent, right? It's a weird field, right? In terms of just Anyway, I also think, and I think this is an important point, is that a lot of tournament goers they follow the Masters as an interesting thing, but they don't care. They don't care. They're going to go to an event because it's fun. Everyone's going to go to Crossroads and lose their mind because it's fun. They're not going to go because I can't wait to get extra points, and it's a team tournament. So how are you doing the scoring for that? I barely get any questions about that, right? I'm going to go and have a fantastic time. To be fair, yes, I know. I have a lot of verbal crutches, dude. It's awful, right?
That's all right. Mike is from the Georgia-Alabama line, so he's got his own pronunciational issues.
I thought Mike was showing his Letterkenny off with, to be fair.
Letterkenny. Right. Watch that with the wife. Show my wife that. Oh, God. What a funny show.
But,
I think
for the middle.
Sorry, Ray, you go.
Because I at least 2 years ago, it was participation. So if you show up, you got the 20 points for the 1 day, which meant that if I was showing up, I would not bring my A list to a 1 day tournament, because I want to bring a friendly list. I might try out my ogres. I might try out something, and then off we go to have some nice fun games on the 1 day, because like you said, it's growing the hobby. I don't want to bring my tournament top tier list. And then
to be fair, I think that Masters is a whole different level anyway, right? I mean, it's a totally different tournament. It's why I don't believe it really should be used as a sign of what the meta is or anything, because so many people take the hardest possible thing that they can. And I think if you look at those lists, probably a third of them, you wouldn't see them regularly at all other tournaments.
Oh, I don't know. I played against a bunch of those, right?
15 ogres and
by Adam Ballard at least once.
Right.
had a non-Masters tournament. So it's an interesting place for us, though. I mean, it's just how do we continue the growth in the United States? How do we continue to extend an olive branch? Hey, come on over from Canada, and it's interesting in the sense that I think maybe some regions are doing it better than others. I don't know. I mean, Pacific Northwest isn't 5 out of the 8 players from Canada?
Yeah.
And isn't Dan Miner running or helping run Masters
Right.
as a Canadian?
Right. He's not one of them playing. Yeah.
But
Right.
he's
So there's
helping
only 3 Americans on the team. So maybe we'll see like an American War of Independence, and they'll be like, "No more Canadians. We want to make our team." I don't know.
Right.
I've got a bail. I've got someone in my waiting room. I'll catch you guys later.
Yep. Thanks, Bart.
Later on, buddy. That is a good point. Flash that one up. Right. I agree with that.
Well, let me say this.
But to that point, what is growing the scene, and is Masters a driver of growing the scene?
Yeah, you can grow the scene in many ways with many events that have nothing to do with Masters.
Right.
So it's when you say growing the scene, I think you need to identify, well, what is the scene? Are you talking about just having more people to play? Are you talking about more tournaments? Are you talking about more competitive tournaments? Because you can have tournaments that are more fun or narrative or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think identifying what you sort of deem as the scene, I found Masters tournaments help as sort of a focal point that even the players who don't think they're going to make it or go, they still like to kind of follow who's winning what, who's going to Masters. It gives us a sort of a thread to sort of link all our stuff around, even our just meetups and game days. So I think Masters is a good sort of platform to build a scene off of, but it's not the only one. You could build a scene in many different ways.
So we in Albany, we did we had gone years without a game store. We had a game store, but they didn't have any game space in the game store, right? And the guy ended up the big local game store ended up opening up a game cafe, and we were able to do a Kings of War Learn to Play Day there as one of their inaugural events, and we got 20 people there, and a lot of Warhammer refugees and people that played historicals and people that played all kinds of stuff, and they showed up and were like, "This game is pretty awesome. And then a couple months later, I ran Dead of Winter, and I had some of those people there who had just started playing. Were like, "It's 2 days. That's cool. My wife's let me out for 2 days. Let's play. Let's go." I think if you're talking about growing the scene, Masters has nothing to do with it. It is you play what your friends are playing. You play what's going on down the street, right? If it's within a car drive away, I'm going to go play it. So if you have a scene that's strong in your region, it's made up of a bunch of little cities with a bunch of little scenes, and you're going to grow it that way. We do a lot of. I try to do a lot of outreach with the guys out there, and they're like, I know of a pocket of people down on Long Island. Sweet, let them know that these are the things that are available to them, and these are the events that are going on near them. Let's give them the opportunity to see what's going on, see this bigger. You're a small pond, man. Get out in the lake, see what's up.
It's interesting because Memphis, at this point, I don't know how much bigger we can grow it. I mean, we get 20 players for a 1 day. Like, okay, guys, this is. That's kind of like critical mass is already kind of there, right? But to Param's comments, and this comment here about the Wildcat GT, which is coming up soon. The Wildcat GT specifically made themselves an invitational, so it's not a Masters qualifier because they want to. They are catering the event to. There's a different type of event. We're not here to. Speaking as someone that hasn't gone to it, but they're not there to smash face. They're there to have a good time,
right?
And it it's not a Masters qualifier. Now, speaking as a TO here in Memphis, if I make my event not a Masters qualifier, I get 25 people. If I make it a Masters, and basically I'm going to get all the locals and everybody within a couple hours. If I make it a Masters qualifier, and I had like 10 to 15 more people, right? I'm getting guys from Southern Mississippi, Louisiana, Kentucky, Arkansas. So at the
and that's
end of the
$700 more dollars,
right?
As a TO,
right? And so that's I get where people are coming from, and I wonder, Wapaka tried one. You guys probably, some of you know what Wapaka was, but it was a great event up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
One of the last few years before Warhammer died, they tried an event where it was basically they split the group into halves. So like hardcore players over here, narrative folks over here, and you basically had 2 tournaments in one event.
Right.
And I don't know that they were kind of the first over the wall, so I don't know how well it, I was there. It didn't go off really that great, but the point is, I don't know if I think there is room for narrative events. That's what I guess
Sure.
what I'm trying to say. I just don't know if there's room for 5 or 6, 10. Right.
Right.
I think more there. Well, I don't know. You guys tell me what I'm crazy.
So I don't know. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but I'm not going to stop. So in the Northeast, we have 4 main events right now. We used to have a bunch, and now we've winnowed it down. But if you go through the course of the year, the Crossroads GT is a 4-man team tournament. It's awesome because of that 4-man. Like, it really is Team Kings of War, right? You go to the Unplugged GT, and that is a Paragon event. He weights paint, sports, and battle all evenly, and you get your ranking as your score, right? That is the hobby event of the Northeast. The Orc Down GT is a mess. It's amazing. It's down on Cape Cod. The guy who runs it is like, please don't take this seriously. It's a boatload of fun. It's the right amount of competitive, but it's like 2,300 points plus 300 points of orcs, no matter what your army is. And then I run the vanilla event. That's 2,100 points, straight blackjack, let's go. So there's events over the course of the year that give you the different flavors of how to play Kings. On top of the single day events, the narrative events, the other stuff we have going on. And all of those things have, if there's any kind of ranking to them, they count for Masters. Because we are a region that doesn't care about sending the 10 best or the 8 best battle players. I want the 8 best representatives of the hobby, which is why we all we care about when we go is we go for Paragon, right? Like we want to be the Paragon region every year. But that is a different ethos. Once again, that goes back to every region does it differently, right? But we have that set up intentionally to give people choice, give people variety, and send what we think are the best team based on the values that we have up here, you know?
You make some good comment. You know, I think it's important to note that we have different demographics. Our demographic is old. Our demographic is 30 plus, right? Let's be frank. And one of my events, if we had 2 teenagers there, and I was ecstatic. Dude. I was like, oh my god, 2 people under 20,
right?
Come on, this is amazing. But that is the exception, not the rule. He brings up a good point about card. Magic. They travel. They spend even more money than us. But you know what they don't do? They don't hobby. They don't paint models. They don't want that commitment.
Neither do I.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you're kind of like you're a man of a different time. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, Rob, is that it takes a lot of time, money, and effort, and means of whether or not it's cash or you have time or whatever to put together a fantasy style miniatures game army. It is a lot of.
And if you look at the market now, it's saturated with skirmish games, right? Like,
yeah, because it's a lot easier. So again, I'm all for trying to build scenes and make Masters accessible, but at some point there needs to be like it's Masters, right? There's tons of tournaments, but Masters should always be this this rung or this. It needs to be one of those things that is a challenge to qualify for. I think it should be an achievement.
And you know what? If you don't care about all that, that's fine too.
Totally fine. Go to tournaments are awesome. Every tournament is super fun. So
there's nothing wrong with
no. There's lots of people that love going to tournaments and that, Masters isn't their bag. So even if they would qualify, they wouldn't go because it's just not their thing. And that's totally fine.
Totally.
And Jeremy, just to bounce on that point, I am actually planning my year as to which tournaments I can get to. My ability to go to them is much more limited with 2 little ones right now. But I'm planning out my tournaments that I can go to in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and that based upon what I can do each month, with the intent that I would like to qualify for Masters because it's something I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to achieve for 2023. So hopefully I can be there and be there for that party in 2023 because it's, to me, a worthwhile accomplishment to be part of that party.
Our region does the same thing as Northeast, where we base all our scores on overall, and some regions don't do that. But again, for us and our values, even though the winner of Masters is the battle, for us as a region, we still want to have the thing that's rewarded most for us is your overall, your sportsmanship, your hobby, and your play. Because if you want to be an ambassador for the hobby, it really is. We talk about it all the time. The pyramid, all those 3 things are really good. So, why not encourage them or make it so that you do have. And because of doing that, I have players who are trying to paint better armies, who are trying to be better opponents.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not, yeah, right. It's not like we're setting these goals and then there isn't any, it doesn't net us anything. I see it myself in just saying these are our goals, and then that trickles down, and people try to then be the best they can in all areas of the game.
Yep, absolutely. It totally matters, right? It totally matters.
Well, where do we go from here? I mean, we kind of we went all over the place tonight. We started off with the concept of, hey, do we need to bring Canadians into the master scene more officially, rather than just proxy American players? It sounds like we don't really, I guess you know what the answer is. When the Canadians ask, we'll bring it up. But like right now, they're not asking because in the Pacific Northwest, they are the Masters team. So
right,
and on the East Coast, it's just a matter of getting Ray off his duff, and getting him out there and scoring points. And he'll be back on the team too. So, those those that Canadians have and can will do. So, thanks for coming on. Any last minute thoughts, you guys? I mean, Mike, you got a mic here, Mike.
Oscar, yeah. I wrote an article. It's going to be a -28 Wednesday about Army selection this year. It's a lot of my articles in -28 are they have to do with like a misconception, and then I take a look at data and I show kind of what's going on.
Where's the book? Where's the book?
December. It's going to get released in December. So it's I too am yelling, "Where's the book? Where's the book?" So yes.
December. Is that like where's the beef? We got to get the same lady,
right?
Where's the book?
I expected more. That is like the summary of most of my life, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, the book's coming in December.
Awesome. Ray, over to you. Any final shout outs or thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to the end of the COVID restrictions and the ability to cross the border to play with all my friends down south.
Yeah, buddy.
What tournaments do we have coming up? I know here in the Wildcat GT is in August. We have TNT and NashCon. That's in August. We have Labor Day weekend is in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Sword of Kings. And then the big one for me is I'm going to Michigan GT in September 30th through October 2nd in Lansing, Michigan. We're looking to jump to about 45 players. We were at 25 last year. And last year, we're talking about Masters and we're talking about small events that can be tough. There was less than 20 players, and 15 of them were Masters players. So it was a rough room. When I'm playing, when my second round opponent is Shannon Shoemaker, and my last opponent is Mark Taylor, and I'm playing, and I'm just like, oh man, this is a tough room, and it's only getting tougher. So if you're geographically anywhere near it, do it. We also have Dead Zone tournament on Saturday night and Armada on Friday night.
It's
a 2-day. It's a 2-day, yeah. And if you come, I will put you up in my mom's house because she lives right by the venue. So anybody wants to reach out to me and wants a place to stay, feed you breakfast, get you to and from the venue and to the Lansing airport if need be. So
we have Bay of Kings returning in September. That's going to be our next big one. The Britain, it's San Diego.
So, but it was Bay of Kings in the north. Now it's Bay of Kings in the south.
Yeah, it's just San Diego Bay,
and you just let them take all your shit, like just
basically, it's the same brand.
Was it his though? Was he really the man?
No,
okay,
he was. It was him. He was the TO. Him and Steve Udy from Rough Rider Wargaming before he moved to Northwest. But yeah, and it's going to be held at like a clubhouse at a yacht, a dock club, so you can look out into the ocean and stuff like that. So that's like our next big tournament out past Masters is going to be.
When are you going to host one in your area, man? You got players.
Oh, the Grapes of Wrath, probably next year. Work has been crazy, and as Mike was attesting to, it's expensive to find space. So, and Napa would be like a boutique tournament where people would have to be prepared to be like, it's not just an easy tournament to come to. It would be one that would be expensive and travel destination. And for that fee, I would want to make sure that the logistics and the terrain and everything is to such a high standard that people feel they're getting their money's worth with it being more expensive. But it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah. So I think it's on the agenda, but it's hard, Rob. I mean, with the show and your own hobby and life and work, and it's tough to being a region chair. It's like you have chunks of time where you don't do anything, and then all of a sudden you'll have a week and you have to wrangle a team of 7 people, and it's like herding cats sometimes. When it's like, I need your list by this day. Okay, here's the thing for this, and people are all over the place. So it's a lot of work.
Mike, when's the next Chamblee Horde event? January.
Well, we got the big one we got coming up is the Crossroads GT, the four-man format. We have all the teams. We have 80 people. But let me rephrase that. We have 40 teams. Did I get that right? No, 20 teams. 20 teams. But there are spaces available for mercs on some of those teams. So if you're interested in coming and competing in the team format, go to Crossroads GT on Facebook, find them, sign up. It's awesome. It is. I cannot express to you guys enough how cool the 4-man format is. It is so cool. Dead of Winter GT is going to be held at the end of January. I'm still locking down a date. But once that gets done, I'll release it. And if you're down with this nonsense coming out of my mouth, then come listen to Unplugged Radio. We're here too.
You guys still do this?
Once a month.
So who's the boss now that Jake is gone?
Greg.
Greg is the boss.
Greg's the boss.
It's like he's pulling the old podcast boss man, because
That's right.
That painting table. He's just pulling it out of his ether. Oh yeah, I remember how to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. No, you had a good episode.
We just came out with an episode today.
A new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brand new. Brand spanking new.
Oh man, that's.
Well, I'm glad you guys are continuing to keep that alive.
Yeah, we're not going to stop.
Mm-hmm. Can't stop.
No one can shut Mike up. Jeremy, you want to take us out?
Yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna have a I know since it's traveling, you're not gonna have your full setup, but I think we'll have our handheld recorders right for Master.
No, I'll have the full setup. It'll just be lavalier mics.
Okay.
They're not as good as the big mics, but fortunately I can't get I can't get 40 pounds of mics on the airplane. So
yeah. So we'll still be doing
some money on some lavalier mics. So we'll be messing with that. And then Wednesday we have an episode about Firefight with the man who wrote it, Mr. Dr. Andrew Sharp.
So stay tuned for that. Our first episode of our monthly Firefight coverage. So we talked to Andy all about second edition development. It's a really fun episode. So stay tuned for that. And thanks everyone. Keep countercharging.
Thanks for joining us, Ray and Mike. Anytime, guys. We'd love to have you here.
Sweet.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. See ya.